This video will cover historical and contemporary issues related to the provision of early childhood education intervention services. So let's start with the most contemporary, the most recent policies that will affect the intervention of early childhood special education services. So the most current authorization, which is part of IDEA, was passed in 2004. It added one finding, and that is to enhance the capacity of state as well as local agencies and service providers to identify, evaluate, and meet the needs of all children, and particularly minority children, low-income children, inner city, and rural children, as well as infants and toddlers in foster care. Going back through a historical perspective, in 1975, Congress passed Public Law 94-142, and this is what we call IDEA. We've all heard of it before. At that time, the law was called the Education of All Handicapped Children Act, and what it really focused on was to provide and make sure that all school-age children would receive a free, appropriate public education, which is known as FAPE. Early intervention services for infants and toddlers with disabilities was not included with this legislation, which is key. The early intervention program for younger children with disabilities did not become part of the law until its reauthorization, which did not take place until 1986. So in that 1986 Act, Congress established a program of early intervention for infants and toddlers with disabilities, and that was in recognition of an urgent and substantial need to enhance the development of handicapped infants and toddlers and to minimize their potential for developmental delay, as well as to reduce the educational costs to our society, including our nation's schools, by minimizing the need for special education and related services after handicapped infants and toddlers reach school age, minimize the likelihood of institutionalization of handicapped individuals, and maximize the potential for their independent living in society, as well as enhance the capacity of families to meet the special needs of their infants and toddlers with handicaps. So that's the language that's used in the 1986 reauthorization. The term handicap, that is no longer used in IDEA, so that's key to remember. So going off of that 1986 Act, it talks about reducing the educational costs to our society and providing the related services and minimizing the need for special education and related services after infants and toddlers reach school age. I think that's key because the quicker you get these supports into place for those students, those young students, the more likely you can get them up to speed. You can catch the problem at the source, and you not only are you going to reduce educational costs because you might get them up to speed and not need to provide those services anymore once they reach school age or potentially later in their education, but you're also going to be helping that student, which I think is an even greater cause, is to help that student succeed as much as possible. As well as obviously it's a great thing to minimize the likelihood of institutionalization and maximizing the potential for their independent living in society. So again, the quicker, which I believe is the most important part of this, is the quicker those students get those supports, the better off they will be. So, and with the more contemporary part of IDEA, which is 2004, it really focuses on making sure that the needs are being met of all children, minority children, low-income children, inner city, rural children, infants and toddlers in foster care. All that is important as well, making sure that every student, especially students with special needs, are getting their needs met. Just to reflect on all this further, we're all familiar with IDEA, but it was really interesting to look into the research more and looking at each reauthorization of IDEA and seeing how different it was from when it first came out to the reauthorizations up until the 2004 one, where you can really see a big difference. And even though some things don't sound like that big of a difference, and even though there might be little changes, or really key changes in those reauthorizations that really do make a big difference in the lives of these students. So I think that's key to remember, key to focus on, and I think there's always the potential to be another reauthorization that might fine tune or add more or change the language in IDEA. So I think that's something that could definitely happen sometime in the future.